Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and the first job at least this week is to build my mobile jig for the Alfarrari. So guys, those of you who were watching last week will have seen that I came to a stopping point because I needed to be able to fit the rear windscreen, and I couldn't have it on the rotisserie which had the bar going all the way through the center of the car. There's no way to access everything. So I needed this on a jig, and I wanted it on a mobile jig. I didn't want it just sitting on the hoist and tying the hoist up because I'm going to be getting stuck into the 911. So the first job is to actually build this frame to bolt this chassis to. And what I'm going to do, as I explained last week, is build some basic box sections that bolt into the suspension points of the car, that bolt onto the base of the rotisserie that already exists. I can actually unbolt the either end of the rotisserie off then, and the car will just sit on the wheels and be mobile, and I can actually move it around the workshop. So that is my first job. There is a good way, actually a simpler way. Jethro Bronner actually suggested, which is a really smart idea, is an easy way to move our shell around like this is just get a shipping pallet and screw 4 coasters on the bottom of it. Casters on the bottom of it, and just sit the shell on the pallet, and you can move the whole thing around like that. For my I've got the casters on here already, and also if I have it up off the ground, it just sort of makes it easier if I do have to get underneath it, particularly when I'm building the rear end. I still got to build the floor and everything else. I want to be able to build a lot of stuff while it's up off the ground a little bit, so a bit more complicated, but half of it's already here. The casters are already welded onto the base, so shouldn't be too big of an issue. So first things first, let's start measuring and cutting up some bits and see if we can start bolting the chassis onto my frame. All right, so what I've done here, this is the mounts that I just welded up while I was on the frame of the car. What it is, I've just got, some pre-drilled holes so I can set a bolt through this end, either end, and bolt this down to hold these 2 rails together. My next job is to measure my uprights and get everything perfectly square and centered, and then weld my uprights onto this, and we should be ready to roll. Okay, so as you can see here, I've just got my uprights there welded on and bolted onto these frame rails now. So now hopefully I should be able to unbolt the frame from either end, and this should be reasonably solid. It's quick and simple, but that'll do the job. Let's disconnect this, and we'll be able to wheel this thing around. All right guys, so it's a new day and the Alpha is on the other side of the workshop finally. The timeline is a little bit skewed because I had to put the framework on the bottom of this so I could move this out of the way so I could do the 911 episode. Now this is over here, we can move forward on what we need to do with this. And like I mentioned last week, the main thing that we have to do to line up the bits at the back, the main fixed point that doesn't change is this rear screen. So I have to get this lower panel lined up perfectly first. So that means pulling off the rest of these bits. I'm going to just panel beat flat these edges that have been picked up for the sandblasting, just so that we have a nice flat surface to work with. Fit the screen in. I can repair them at a later date, but just at the moment that is still a factory known point that's good. And we can start trying to line up this panel. All right, so you saw I put the rubber on the old screen, not bothering tightening it up or anything yet. This is just trying to get it lined up. And I've clamped on this piece here, and there's still a bit of movement. It's actually quite difficult to get it right. You can see I used a jack underneath here with a block of wood to push up the back, because it seemed like the lower edge of the screen was tilted down a little bit too much, and I wasn't really happy with it. Moving forward, I'm going to start putting some tech screws. I looked at using Clecos, and after talking to Tim, and I don't have them for starters, but the problem with Clecos is unless something is lined up perfectly, it's not going to hold two things together very well. It will if they line up beautifully, it holds together and they're good. But if there's a little bit of tension, if you need to sort of clamp something together, they're just not going to hold the mustard. So what I'm going to use is just self-tapping screws. I can weld up the holes afterwards, and that's how I'm going to try and line everything up and get everything sort of just screwed into place first before I weld anything, like I mentioned earlier. So let's start tech screwing. Okay, so what I've been looking at inside here is if you can see around the edge, see where there's gaps. It's probably not focusing that great in here, but I'm trying to get the rubber of the window to line up nicely with the framework all the way around. Now, it's hard to hold the window perfectly in place. It keeps wanting to slide down, obviously, but I'm just trying to line it up and make sure that it's sitting reasonably flat all the way around, so that when I do go to put it in permanently, I'll be able to do it. So I've put enough of these style windows in cars now that I have an idea of what I'm looking for. And basically, there's a rubber lip around the edge of the window, and then there's the edge of the window frame, and you put a piece of string in and peel that lip underneath, and it hooks on, and that's all that holds these windows in. I'm trying to get the lip as it stands, without actually putting it in, to sit nice and flat all the way around the window. Now, there is a bit of adjustment in it. There's a bit of room to move, because none of them that I've ever put in are perfectly square and straight. But it can't be out too much, because otherwise it's just not going to fit. So I'm going backwards and forwards now, just trying everything out. I'm going to now put the boot back on again, and the boot lid, and then I'll be able to sort of see how that fits into the whole equation, and keep moving forward. All right, so you can see along this edge here that it's getting pretty reasonable now. Like all the way up the sides is pretty good. The top edge is actually, you can't see it from this angle, but it's sitting up a little bit. So I'm going to try hand panel beat up that top edge a little bit. And a couple of these corners, I might just, in this corner back down here, in that corner back down there, I might just try and hand panel beat that up a little bit. Same over here on this corner here. If it'll focus, yeah, see there's a little bit of a gap there. And just try and get it so this rear window will seal just nicely. And the other thing is this is quite tight. This boot lid is very tight along here. I did actually extend up the holes a bit to space this boot out, but I don't want to extend it too much. I'm just trying to get everything close-ish to start with. What I may also have to do is just trim off this corner here just a little bit, so that I can fit on this other quarter panel and see if I can get them all to line up. So a little bit more panel beating, a little bit more fettling, and we'll see how it fits. All right, I'm pretty happy with the fitment of the rear glass now. I like where the placement is. It looks like it's pretty good. My next step is trying to line up this rear guard. Now, one of the issues is that both this panel and this panel, both of these, have the lip on the edge that they overlap each other and they sort of crisscross. So I've just marked in here, and I'm going to do a little trim on both of them to try and get them to line up nicely, and then keep sort of placing the boot on and off to try and get that all in the right spot as well, and gradually line them up and get them all neat so then I can screw them together and hopefully they're in the right spot. All right, it's slow progress, but it's progress. We've got this quarter panel now lined up nicely, at least with the boot. That's sitting down. I've got nice panel gaps all the way around the edge. The height difference is not great, so the boot is sitting a little bit high just here on this end, and then it sits just a little bit low in the middle. So this panel here, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of fettling, trying to sort of push it up and try and get it sitting exactly where where it needs to sit. But the quarter panel is lined up beautifully, and with the boot now, getting the door correct is another story. So as you can see here, the door is all over the place. It's sitting out from the car at the bottom. It's touching the guard at the top. But it looks like the shape of this guard is not actually the same as the edge of the door. So it actually comes in too far here, whereas the panel gap, the rest of the way down, is actually pretty good. It's just the door, it needs to be twisted or something, and yeah, and we'll all line up. Holding it in like that actually sits pretty good, except for the top edge here. So we'll see what we can do about this. And a lot of that might have to do with that B-pillar. Okay, so you can see I've bolted the door frame onto the car. Obviously, it doesn't have the skin on it. I do have the replacement skin right here, but again, I don't want to make this secure on it until such time as everything lines up. That means to actually line it up properly, I need to put the catch back in it, and this is what the catch currently looks like. It's pretty horrible. So I'm going to chuck it now into the sandblaster and see if I can get rid of some of this rust, and then see if I can oil it up and actually get it so it's going to function again. And with that, the whole side is on, and it looks good. But don't be fooled, nothing actually lines up properly. This is just loosely clamped on here with one vice grip, so it is still all over the place. There's still a lot of work to get everything on. This door skin is actually just sitting there. But we're getting there. We're gradually working the way around and getting all the pieces to line up. The boot is actually looking like it lines up okay now. We've got most of the panel gaps pretty good, and the rear screen is looking good. So it's progress. It's slow, but it's progress. In any case, I am definitely out of time, so that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in the 1950s, Alfa Romeo contacted Giuseppe Nuccio Bertoni of the Bertoni Design House and contracted him to come up with 3 concept vehicles to research aerodynamic drag. The idea was to create the lowest possible drag coefficient, and these were known as the Berlinetta Aerodynamica Tecnica, otherwise known as the BAT concepts. The first car, known as BAT 5, was shown at the 1953 Turin Auto Show. The nose of the cars and the wheel covers were designed to eliminate air disruption at high speed. The low roofline and the split rear window coming to a point helped the car to have a drag coefficient of 0.23 and a top speed of 200 kilometers an hour. Bat 7 was first shown in 1954 and had an even lower nose and even larger curved tail fins, which helped to further reduce its drag coefficient down to 0.19, which is impressive even by today's standards. The third car, the Bat 9, was revealed in 1955, but was further toned down to really represent the current Alfas of the day. Finally, over 50 years later, Bertone revealed the Bat 11 in 2008, which was based on the 8C Competizione, but took a lot of its design cues from the original cars. Okay, well, another episode wends its way to a close. Hope you're enjoying it. If you'd like to help us out, you can buy a stylish hoodie or t-shirt and join us on Patreon to watch the show a day early. Otherwise, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, YouTube.
Yep. I think she summed it up. I don't really have to say anything.
That'll be a first. Bye, guys.
All right. See you next time.
And as the Bellonetta aerodynamica, 2,000 kilometers an hour. Oh, no, it's the tail of your G. Drag coefficient down to 0.23, 0.13.
19.
And an 11, the Bat